Good morning and welcome. My name is Rebecca Croft and I'm a Senior Event Strategist with JDC Events. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on pricing a digital event. We understand how important your time is and we will keep this brief. Today's webinar will help you navigate the process for making the decision of hosting a digital event and what to consider when setting your pricing. But first, we have a couple of housekeeping tips. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website. Please submit your questions at any time during the webinar via the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. This webinar is the first in a series that we are creating on digital events. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for updates on future webinars. We're so excited to welcome you and hope you find the content valuable and practical in planning your digital events. Now let me introduce you to Debbie Levy, Senior Event Strategist, who is here to discuss what to consider in pricing and the psychology behind it. Debbie?
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning and happy Friday, everyone. As Rebecca said, we'll be focusing on digital event pricing today, considering the premise that your event will be a participant fee-based event. Pricing is always one of the initial questions when talking digital events. I am so often asked, how much will a digital event cost? Well, the answer isn't a one-size-fits-all, unfortunately. Today, I will focus on points to consider when working on pricing to help you navigate the pricing answer. Starting with niche. Consider your particular segment or place in the market. Are you government, non-government, association, or corporate? What industry or segment do you represent, and what are your goals for this digital event? Market. What will your specific niche market bear? Consider how you base the pricing of your in-person meetings and conferences. If your content is the same or similar, you should be charging the same prices. Look at your budget. You will be using your budget to purchase the best technical expertise while utilizing the best digital platforms to ensure a seamless pivot from in-person meetings to digital events. Value. This is important because understanding the value of your content will allow you to determine how much you can charge for your event. Remember, value doesn't only mean financial, but also refers to the educational benefit. Value-based pricing takes into account how much participants are willing to pay for the content you are providing. Value is not based on what it costs to produce your event, but rather it's based on how much you should charge because of the event and content you are offering. Now let's take a look at the psychology behind pricing. FOMO, the fear of missing out. When people see that the influencers within their industry, their peers, or those whom they hold in great regard are all participating, their interest will be piqued as well, and they will want to be a part of the engaging event. The more FOMO, the higher the content value. Personas. Anticipate your participant demographics. Consider their professional position. Are they in management? If so, what level are they? Are their budgets personal or business-based funding? Make sure your content or area of presentation will capture the desired participant audience. Note how that information is best received by the participants. We know not everyone learns the same way. Some are more visual, preferring slides and video, and some are more auditory, relating to music and speaking, and some more interactive, such as using polls or physical activities. But generally, most are a combination of all of these. Here's an example that can be framed for any event once you know your who, what, how, why, and your goals. Say you're holding an event for the engineering market and you want to capture the attendance of chief of engineers in power plants. Once you determine what the chiefs value most and how they like to receive their information, you will know how to value the event. Motivation. Why would anyone pay for a digital event? Well, things to consider. What stage are they in their careers? Is this a beginner's level, intermediary, or senior level? And referencing the budget that I mentioned a few minutes ago, how much money is available to invest in trainings and meetings this year? You want prospective participants to view this as an investment in education that will be beneficial to the company. Is this personal or business funding? Will the participant be paying out of pocket or will they be sponsored? Think about educational goals, CEU credits, certificates of participation. Are your participants looking to network or make connections? Because we all know how important networking is. So how far can you make this event reach? Next, we're going to talk pricing strategies. Static pricing. Single pricing for all participants without regard to registration category or date of registration. Tiered pricing or perceived discounts. The biggest motivation for tiered pricing is the flexibility for a variety of participant types, which translates to price points that attract more and varied participants. The appeal is for those who perceive a greater value in higher prices, while serving others who may only be able to afford the lower tiered price. With the tiered pricing, you're covering all your bases. When trying to decide what your tiered pricing will look like, don't be afraid to reach out to potential participants, coworkers, and even friends. Ask them what they would find appealing about your event, but stay away from asking prices related questions. Instead, focus on the experience. What would compel them to participate in the first place? So there are numerous examples of static and tiered pricing, and I'm sure many of you have experienced both static and tiered when registering for events. But here's the core of grouping of tiered levels. We've got special access. This gives participants something extra for a higher price. For example, VIP access to speakers, discussions or specific sessions, breakouts, handouts that they can print for themselves, and perhaps additional networking. Targeted discounts. This gives discounts to participants or groups that can prove membership in a specified niche, such as students, children, specific organizations, industry members, or members of the military. Group discounts. Group discounts offer discounts for a bulk purchase, for example, 6 registrations for one price. Early bird and dynamic pricing. Many of you may be familiar with the popular early bird concept for dinners at 4 p.m. in Florida. The incentive is that an early registration gets a discount from the regularly priced registration fee. You'll want to make sure that the discount is incentive enough to be a reward for an early registration. Of note, make sure you publish early bird pricing when it begins and when it ends. With early bird dynamic pricing, you have the opportunity to generate early interest, boost perceived value, excite, and motivate potential participants. These early commitments will help with gauging the number of participants, who they are, as well as offsetting event production costs. So before we continue, I believe we have a question. Rebecca?
Yes, we do, Debbie. One of our participants is asking, I manage association events and on a rather large scale. We have a ton of content. What do you think is the most important first consideration in evaluating pricing?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, just as with the in-person meeting, knowing the value of your content is the first consideration. Focus on the content you are delivering and how you are delivering. If you've placed the value of your content, then you know how much someone will pay to attend your digital event. And now moving on to Cindy DeSalis, Senior Event Manager, who will talk to us about costs, pricing structures, and add-on benefits. Cindy?
Thanks, Debbie. One thing I want to let you know before we continue, there is at the bottom of your screen a Q&A box. So if you do have questions, feel free to put them in there and we will answer them as you ask. But as far as determining costs, when determining costs, you want to take all expenses and income into account. Some might ask why there would be a charge for a webinar when there aren't costs for meeting space and food. Well, we end up reallocating the costs and would need to include things like technical fees, if there are speaker fees, and if you're going to have a professional company produce the event, etc. So also when you're including your costs, don't forget to include overhead, labor hours for those who, for the hours that your staff are working on it, any embedded fees such as service fees, credit card processing fees, and don't forget tax. And then also commissions. Make sure that you forecast how much might be collected in sponsorship revenues, attendee sales, and exhibitor fees. Also, please note that we will have a future webcast on sponsorships and exhibits because that's a big topic to cover. Once you have all of your costs, you'll want to determine what your margin of profitability will be, which then takes us to pricing structures. There are many ways to slice the pie when deciding on a pricing structure. Consider offering single-day registration, which just be a one-day. Multi-day, where the individual could purchase a combination of days that work for them. By track, purchasing registration based on a subject track. For example, a beginner track might have a foundation of the field, and an intermediate track might give more advanced content. Member versus non-member, I think we've all seen this, where members get a discount and a non-member would pay full price. Bundling. You could offer registrations based on being a member of a certain track, etc. And then BOGO, buy one, get one. Bring a friend or colleague, you could receive a discount or even a free registration. Group discounts. Often if a group registers 3 or more members, they'll get a discount. And then free registrations. Consider providing free access to some members if you have room in your budget. Also, if you have revenue from sponsorships or exhibit space, this could help offset those costs. Now let's take a look at some of the add-on benefits. First of all, measurable. Digital meetings allow you to have instant access to measurable data, such as who attended, how long they participated, where they came from, how much did they pay, and this information can be used to determine pricing. Then also CEU credits or a certificate of participation. Once they've attended the digital workshop, they can have instant downloadable credit, which could help with certifications or job promotions. CEUs can also raise the value of your event, which can help contribute to your pricing structure and digital or decision-making, my apologies. Greater attendance. Hosting digital events allows you to have many more attendees. And by increasing attendance, you can consider a lower per person cost and make up the revenue in the quantity of attendees. Also, an event that is online allows you to participate from just about anywhere, so travel and lodging costs aren't a factor. And if your event is archived, participants can log in at their convenience. And finally, the overall value. A digital event still allows you to have the plenaries, workshops, virtual swag, and networking. If you're offering any extras such as a downloadable handout, an Excel template, or something else that allows them to apply the knowledge they learned, it can definitely increase the value. You can offer the same content and deliver similar experiences, but just online instead of in person. In summary, there are many creative ways to price your digital event. And I believe that there is a question on the chat, Rebecca?
Yes, Cindy. Someone is asking, what range of prices should I be considering?
That's a great question. And I really wish there was a standard dollar amount that I could give. But honestly, the exact pricing is really dependent upon the answers to the components that we reviewed today. Once you've evaluated these items, then you can kind of develop your pricing. Remember though, the value determines the pricing, not the cost of delivery. And if you'd like to talk to us more about pricing, feel free to reach out to us because we'd be happy to talk with you about your individual event. Now, before we continue, we're launching a live poll with a couple of questions for you to answer. The poll should appear as a pop-up on your screen. If you don't see it, hover your cursor at the bottom of the screen to access the control. There are 3 questions. We'll keep the poll up for a few moments, and we do hope that you've gathered some good tips from this webinar. And now I will turn it back to Rebecca for a wrap-up.
Thank you, Cindy. And thank you all for spending time out of your day to attend the first in our Planning Your Digital Event series. We will be bringing you a new module every 2 weeks, and your responses to the poll will help us determine future topics. Future webinars might include exhibiting and sponsorships, marketing tactics, how to handle speakers in the digital world, and/or content development. You will be receiving a follow-up email that will have a link to register for our next webinar.